Connolly.
Thank you. Welcome to Deputy First Minister McGuinness. It's a right mouthful to say it, but you're very welcome. And first of all, I'm not here to pint score. I'm not here to be political. I'm not here to refer to Sinn Féin. I'm here because we have a Controller and Auditor General's report. And just on that, what worries me there at the end of your... and I welcome you for coming here and facing us. At the heart of this issue are the allegations made by McGuinness TD. That's not actually correct for today. We're here because of concerns raised in this report. Not allegations, concerns factually set out. So that's the first thing. And if you can be of assistance in relation to that, that would be very helpful. If you can't, so be it. And so in that report we have 5 chapters, and I've sort of said this to every single witness. Have you read the report?
Yes.
Okay. So
I can't say that I remember all of it.
No, you don't have to remember it, but you've read it, so you know the substance of what's at issue here. And so really, in relation to yourself, I think there are only 2 chapters. One is the management of conflicts of interest, where the Controller and Auditor General has raised concerns, and the other then is in relation to the basis for the sale, which brings in your Assembly in Northern Ireland and the political. So those 2 aspects are very important. So let's take maybe what's the more contentious, but maybe for the moment the easiest, the conflict of interest and Mr Cushnahan. You had no input whatsoever in the nomination of Mr Cushnahan or Mr Rountree?
None whatsoever.
Did it ever come up for a discussion at any meeting you were ever at?
No.
Never. Okay. And so that came...
I think the height of it was that we were informed by the Department of Finance and Personnel that they were going to nominate Brian Rountree and Frank Cushnahan to NAMA, who ultimately the appointments were made by
We
NAMA.
know all that, and I'm going to just stick. So you were aware that they were nominated then by your
yes.
You were in it, and you had no concerns about them?
No, at that stage, none whatsoever.
And when did you have concerns about either of them or anybody in relation to a conflict of interest?
After McGuinness.
When was that?
It was sometime in the middle of last year. In the Dáil.
Okay. Now, you've already appeared before the hearing in Northern Ireland and given oral evidence, I understand, roughly a year ago, September, and then subsequently you gave a written statement, or you replied to items that were outstanding. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
I'm not trying to catch you, but that's the record of what you gave in Northern Ireland. So I don't have access to that. And
I thought my evidence to the Finance and Personnel Committee was very thorough and very complete.
It may well have been, and I'll find it before I finish.
There may have been additional points that we followed up on.
There were just additional points. There's a list of witnesses. You're one of them, and then they refer to you submitting a further document, answering 1 or 2 items. Anyway, my whole question, though, is in relation to the conflict of interest. You only became aware that there was an issue when Deputy McGuinness raised. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, wasn't there an investigation in Northern Ireland about housing and a conflict of interest in relation to Mr. I better be careful with the name.
Mr. Rountree?
No, Mr. Cushnahan, I thought.
I think you're talking about the Red Sky controversy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And didn't that throw up issues in relation to a conflict of interest about that particular man?
He was certainly involved as someone who had a very senior position in that situation.
Yeah.
But in relation to this process.
No, just let me deal. No, it's a specific question. Yeah. Did you become aware that issues were raised at that point in relation to a conflict of interest about Mr. Cushnahan?
Well, I would need to go back and look at the timing of all of that. Have you got the date of when that was?
I have actually, just in the report on the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, management of response, maintenance contracts.
Was that after his appointment?
Yes, it certainly was. Yeah. And the report embargoed until the 20th of March 2013. Yeah. And you're aware of that?
I'm aware that there was an investigation.
And you're aware then of a very serious factual situation here at paragraph 37. His involvement was totally unethical and could and should have been avoided.
Well, whatever about that, there wasn't any.
You're aware of that report? You're aware that that was raised?
I'm not.
Record, so
It's written here, Public Accounts Committee, report on the Northern Ireland Housing Executive Management of Response Maintenance Contract, ordered by the Public Accounts Committee to be printed on the 20th of February 2013.
Yeah.
And that's a detailed written report. You've read that, I presume?
No, I haven't read it.
Oh, you haven't. All right.
My party has read it.
Well, maybe you could go back and just read it and just the issue I'm raising. An issue was raised at that point about a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I would have thought in Northern Ireland, and with yourselves, you would have thought, oh, good Lord, we look at that now. Is that an appropriate person to have on the Northern Ireland Advisory Committee? That just is only a question.
Well, I suppose it comes down to whether or not the reference to that is something that would forbid his participation in the advisory group to NAMA.
No, I'm asking just, Deputy First Minister, what I'm saying to you is that looks very serious to me. And again, I appreciate we've the benefit of hindsight looking back. But at the time, that was a very serious report and a very serious statement about a conflict of interest.
Yeah, but it was long. It was long after. I suspect it was long after he was nominated.
Absolutely.
By
he continued to sit on the Northern Ireland Advisory Committee following that. I won't use the word damning. Following that very serious report, he continued to sit on the Northern Ireland Advisory Committee up to November 2013. You were aware of that. You didn't raise any issues about that or think maybe there's something wrong here, maybe I should question this more. The answer is no. That's okay. So I'm going to move on just to a number of other questions. I have to say, and I'd like to be fair to all, and I certainly wouldn't like to be sitting over there before us, but we do our best to be polite and stick with facts. And NAMA have come in here, and I have to say I've been extremely hard on them in relation to the narrative. Now, I have to say you've done something similar, Deputy First Minister. You're given a narrative here rather than factual. You've given opinions, and I have been extremely hard on Minister Noonan, but you're given opinions here. And really all we want from you is, can you help us in relation to the Controller and Auditor General's report, conflict of interest and pressure from Northern Ireland politicians? That's all. Now, I have to say, you haven't done that in your opening statement. You've given what seems to me a self-serving statement. I know you disagree with that, and feel free to disagree with me.
Well, with respect, if you have any questions to ask me,
I'm going to ask you a question now. Yeah. So I have to make that comment first. I've made it on a lot of the witnesses, and I want to be fair. You've done the exact same thing. Now, I asked you one very specific question. The next question is, when you found out that the note of the phone call wasn't accurate, the phone conference, what did you do about it?
Well, I mean, I have... In the aftermath of all of this, I've written to Minister Noonan.
When did you become aware it wasn't accurate? Because it's very serious.
Well, we've only received that note. We only received that note in the aftermath of myself appearing at the DFP committee.
That was last year?
Afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, so sometime in
that note suddenly appeared after I gave evidence.
I heard that.
To the committee,
yeah.
and we had our own.
That's okay.
We had our own view about the timing of all of that.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you only became aware of it. But then, did you write in and say this is not accurate, this is not complete, this has already been put to you by other deputies? And if so, could we have a copy of that where you took them to task, rightly so, if they didn't record accurately what happened?
No, we didn't take him. We didn't take him to task in terms of the accuracy of it, because I wasn't exercised by the comments that I had made in relation to a fire sale not being in the note.
So you didn't write to them and say this is inaccurate, this is what I said, it should have been recorded?
No.
Okay, that's okay, you didn't do that. And then in relation to your contact, in your opening statement you say there was only one contact, is that right?
Pardon?
In your opening statement, you say there was only one contact.
What's he?
A conference call. As Deputy First Minister, my only involvement was a conference call on January the 14th, 2014, with the First Minister, Peter Robinson.
Well, I also said that I was involved in a meeting in September 2014.
That was afterwards.
Was celebrated after the sale.
Afterwards, prior to the sale. Prior to the sale.
Yeah,
this was your only contact in relation to Project Eagle. There was never any other contact.
Only the intermittent Peter Robinson tell me it's happening or it's not happening.
Okay.
Or PIMCO are interested or they're not interested.
I'm going to come back to that now, the intermittent contact. But was there any other meeting with Cerberus, with PIMCO, where you attended?
No.
Never?
No.
Okay. Now, I'm asking you that specifically because I have read somewhere it's Cerberus, and they'll be coming into us as well, and I'm going to put it them to specifically. They have said that they met with a number of people. They name you, but they don't specifically say when. They say as part of its due diligence into Northern Ireland economy and ongoing liaison with the stakeholders in the jurisdiction, Cerberus has had contact to varying extents with a number of Northern Irish politicians. So they've had contact to varying extents with a number of Northern Irish politicians, including the First Minister Peter Robinson, the Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness, and then they go on, the Minister for Finance and so on. These interactions involve senior Cerberus representatives, including in some instances the Chair, former Vice President of the United States. So that's what they're saying. And my question to you now, did you ever meet any representative in any guise from Cerberus, PIMCO or any other person or company bidding for Project Eagle?
I've already made it clear that the only meetings that I have been aware of were the meeting with PIMCO, which this committee took possession of a letter from PIMCO in the course of the last couple of weeks, which clearly identified, in my view, meetings were taking place. I was not part of that
that's
meeting.
Okay. So your answer is...
In the aftermath of that, there was a further meeting with Cerberus prior to the sale of Project Eagle. I was not at it.
Okay.
I wasn't told about it. And I already, in my earlier testimony, said that later that day, Peter Robinson and I were both at a job announcement in West Belfast, and he never even mentioned that he had met with the former Vice President of the United States.
That's okay.
The only time I met with the former Vice President of the United States was in September of 2014. And in fact, I recall the Irish News actually wrote an article which said that was a secret meeting.
That's okay, Deputy First Minister.
There was nothing secret about it because I tweeted out a photograph of it.
Let me very... please.
For the record, what document are
That's
you reading
relation
from?
to Cerberus.
Just so we know what
it's
you're
in
reading
relation
from.
to the 16th of September 2000.
So what's the document? Is it the PAC document?
No, it's the Cerberus. They made to the Northern Ireland when the
Northern Ireland Committee.
Yeah, the Northern Ireland
so
Committee.
you got it from their website.
Chair, we have done a trawl of all of these situations, and none of our officials have turned up any meeting that I was at with either Cerberus or PIMCO other than the meeting in September 2014.
If you could just, so when I asked the question, you're saying no, I have met nobody. That's the answer to that.
Your time is...
Well, sorry, John, one was finished, that's no. Then we'll come back. When did the First Minister Peter Robinson tell you about PIMCO? And I think my colleague was asking you about this earlier on, and you said that he came back and told you that PIMCO had withdrawn. When was that? Was that recorded? What did he tell you?
Well, I told your colleague that I couldn't remember the date, but I will ascertain to try and get that date.
You see, I find that, now I have to, again, I find that difficult to accept because you've come here with a prepared statement. That's crucial for us in terms of the conflict of interest and what's before us. Not allegations, what's before us in terms of concerns, and one is conflict of interest, a whole chapter. And so what Mr Robinson told you about PIMCO is very important. And I'm asking you, and you don't know, you're going to check.
No, what I need to check is the date, and I think that's quite reasonable.
Fine. That's okay.
But I did say that Peter Robinson told me that PIMCO have withdrawn their bid.
You did, and I'm asking you what else he told you.
That's all he told me.
And did you?
He told me not, and I know there's now a massive issue around the whole issue of 16 million. And
did he? You can see we're under time pressure. So did he tell you that there was money involved? There was a difficulty?
No.
Nothing. He simply told you PIMCO had withdrawn. Okay. And back then, just to the Northern Ireland background, and that's the other chapter. The pressure, and it's NAMA that has said this back to the Controller in General, that they simply couldn't ignore the political background in Northern Ireland. And in fact, this extraordinary statement that's been referred to, I think it was the chair of NAMA or the CEO, and they said actually they'd prefer to deal with a vulture fund than NAMA. Are you aware of that? Were you aware of that level of hostility, that they prefer to deal with a vulture fund, or would you agree with that statement?
I wasn't aware of that, but I do think that let's not lose sight of the reality that the ultimate responsibility for selling Project Eagle lay with NAMA, and NAMA, in my opinion, should have been only concerned about the money of taxpayers in the south, and also, from our perspective, not doing anything that in any way would damage our economic prospects in the north.
My last question. After the sale was over, or on the day, the 3rd or the 4th, there's a whole series of phone calls between, extraordinary so, setting out that the former Vice President of America is going to phone the First Minister and so on, and all of these where's his number, is it okay to phone him? Were you phoned?
No.
You weren't contacted whatsoever?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.